Hi everyone. Today we're going to be working with lesson 1.3. We are in our chapter 1 Go Math book and we're on page 17. So you can follow along the lesson with me. So let's take a look at the table to the right. I see that we have Pine Lake Dog Park as the title. So let's unlock our problem and figure out what we're trying to find here. The table shows how many dogs went to Pine Lake Dog Park during the summer months. About how many dogs went to the park during June and August. So let's think about that. I see a different word here, the word about. Usually the problems that I've been solving lately just say how many dogs. This is letting me know that I'm going to be estimating. When we estimate, we find a number that's close by the number that we'll have. So we will have to figure out how many dogs went to the park during June and August. So let's take a look at our chart over here. If I see the labels each month, I have June, July, and August. The number of dogs are listed, and we're focusing on June and August. So when I see the word "and" there and the words "how many," I know that I need to combine those two together. So a way that we can do that where we're just finding the estimate is we're going to find compatible numbers. This is a way that usually we don't add when we're working in the classroom. Usually we round to the nearest 10 or 100. But today I will show you compatible numbers. But please know that we will get used to using rounding to the nearest 10 or 100 instead of compatible numbers. Sometimes compatible numbers, we usually find the number that has a 5 in it that's closest to the number that we have. So any number that is a multiple of 5 could be considered a compatible number. So 420, 425, 430, 435 would be some examples. So in this case, 432 is rounded to 425 because that number is close to 432, and 489 could be rounded to 475. And by having 5s in our ones place, it's easy to add. So we would get the estimate of 900. So about 900 dogs went to Pine Lake Dog Park during June and August. Now, there are other ways that we can find compatible numbers. Let's take a look at our next problem. What other compatible numbers could you have used? So let's try rounding to the nearest 10. So we'll take our same problem, 432 plus 489, and let's round those to the nearest 10. So I underline the place that I'm rounding. I look next door. If we have 5 or above, we give it a shove and move the 10 up to the next number. If it's 4 or below, we let it go and change the rest to all zeros. So it is less than 4. So we're going to change 432 to 430. And then we'll round 489. We look at the 8. We go look at the next door number. 5 or above, we give it a shove up to the next 10. 4 or below, we let it go and change the rest. I see that it's higher, so we'll round that to 490. So that's another way that we can use numbers that are easier to add. And then in this case, we have 930 as the sum. So that is still close to a 900, which was the answer that we got when we used compatible numbers. So let's now write this in words. What other compatible numbers could you have used? I can use 430 and 490 to get the sum of 930. Okay, so let's come back up to this problem and let's get the real answer, the exact answer, just to see if we're close. So the answer is 921. So both ways, the compatible way was 900, rounding to the nearest 10 was 930. They're both close to 921, but rounding to the nearest 10 is a little more accurate. And here is a tip. Typically, rounding to the nearest 10 will get you closest to the exact number. So if you're good at rounding to the nearest 10, that would maybe be the way that you'd get the closest to your exact answer. So let's go down to the second problem. About how many dogs went to the park during July and August? So now we're looking at some other numbers in our chart. What compatible numbers could we use? Okay, so let's take a look. We have 317 and 489. I'm going to write my notes over on the side. And let's round these numbers. Okay, so we'll round 317. We look at our tens number. We look next door at our ones. 5 or above. We go up to the next 10, and it is 5 or above. 7. Okay, and then 489, just like we rounded before, would round up to 490. So when I add those numbers together, we have 810. 810 dogs would go to the park. So let's answer that. I can use 320 and 490 to get the sum of 810 dogs. Okay, good job with rounding. Let's go on to our next page. The next page is going to be page 18. And for this problem, we're going to find another way. We're going to use place value to round. So we have 432 plus 489. So first, you want to find the place to which you want to round. And you want to make sure if you're rounding the numbers to the nearest 10, you have to round both of those numbers to the nearest 10. And if you're choosing to round to the nearest 100, you would want to round both numbers to the nearest 100. So here, we're going to round 432 to the nearest 100. We're going to look to the digit to the right of the hundreds place. So here we have the number 4. We're rounding to the nearest 100. We look down, we look next door, and we see that 3 is lower. So we think of our rule, 5 or above, we give it a shove up to the next 100. 4 or below, we let it go and change the rest to all zeros, and it is less. So we change our number to 400 then. You can also think of it on a number line. 432 is between 400 and 500, and I always think 450 or any number with 50 would be in the middle. So 432 would fall right in there, and so that's going to round to 400. So now we look at 489, and we're going to underline the place that we're rounding to, which is the nearest 100. We're looking next door, and that's a higher number, greater than 5, so that's going up to 500. And for this, I can also think about a number line. 489 would be closest to 500 instead of 400. Okay, so down here, that was exactly what happened there at step 2. We rounded. I just did that down up above. So now we'll add them together. 400 plus 500 is 900. So 432 plus 489 is about 900. So today we learned about compatible numbers. We also practiced rounding to the nearest 10 and the nearest 100. So now let's put that to use and try some sample problems together. So let's use rounding. We'll round 304 to 300. Pause the video and tell me, where would 494 round to? You can use whichever strategy you'd like. You can think about a number line and think, well, what place would that number go? If it's closer to 500, it would move up to 500. If it's closer in this section to 400, 450 and lower, it would move down to 400. So go ahead and give it a try and add it up. Okay, so if you said 500, you were correct. So we estimate that answer to be 800. Let's try another one. I would like you to try now, round this to the nearest 10. I wouldn't round to the nearest 100 because I see I only have 2 places, 1s and 10s. Go ahead and pause the video and round, estimate, and then add. If you rounded 65 to 70 and 23 to 20, you are correct. Now I'd like you to try number 3. For number 3, I'd like you to round to the nearest 100. Go ahead and pause the video and give it a try. If you rounded 421 to 400 and 218 to 200? You are correct. The sum would be 600. Now let's try a word problem together. This is in the On Your Own section on the same lesson. Seth bought a pair of sneakers for $48 and a jacket for $64. Explain how you can estimate to find the total amount that he spent for the sneakers and jacket. Give this one a try. Pause the video and then come back to check your answer. So I see that he bought 2 items, sneakers and a jacket. We have to estimate to find the total amount. So I'm going to take my problem here and I'm going to give it a try and estimate. I'm going to round 48 up to 50. Did you do that? 64, I'll round down to 60. And the answer is 110. So how can I explain this? Let's figure that out. Let's see. I can round $48 to $50 and $64 to $60. The sum is $110. So if you did that, awesome job. Thank you for rounding with me today. Remember, 3 ways we can round: using compatible numbers or using rounding to the nearest 10 or the nearest 100 strategy. But typically in 3rd grade, we're going to be rounding to the nearest 10 or the nearest 100. And we will continue to practice this. Thank you for learning with me today, Sharks. Have a good rest of your day.